Everybody beware, you better prepare. Disaster can happen anytime, anywhere. Everybody beware, you better prepare. Disaster can happen anytime, anywhere. Everybody.
Greetings, everyone. From Danger to Safety is a production of the National Emergency Management Agency, NEMA. I'm Vesta Southwell. Today on the program, I'm so very pleased to have as our guest Mr. Cromwell Williams. Mr. Williams is the Manager Water Engineer at Water Services Department, but he certainly has a long history with our agency, NEMA, and with myself because I've interviewed him quite a bit in his capacity as chairperson of the Damage and Needs Assessment Subcommittee of the National Disaster Plan. Welcome to the program, Mr. Williams.
Thank you, Vesta. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much for coming. I know that we tried to do it last week, I think, but we had to change the date, so I'm thankful that you made time to have this conversation with us. We are currently in a severe drought, we are told. What is a drought?
Okay, a drought basically means that there is significantly reduced rainfall compared to what can be considered as normal. When I say significantly reduced, if I might try to be a bit more precise, in St. Kitts, for instance, we monitor the rainfall on a daily basis. That is done mainly by the meteorological services at the SCASPA. And we noticed at the water department that our water supply from our sources was dropping off significantly. And after it reached a certain point, we decided, let's get some data from the Met Office to see what the rainfall has been like. And I was very surprised when I realized that for the first 4 months of the year, January, February, March, April, we realized that the total rainfall that we had received so far for the first 4 months of the year was just about 6 inches of rain. When we compared that to last year, last year was 12 inches.
Wow.
So we had
for the same period?
Right. So we had a 50% drop off.
Wow.
And then when you look at what we call the long-term average, means over many years, the typical average for this period was like 15 inches. So we realized, wow, it's much drier, much less rain than we thought. And so we realized that, we, from the Water Services Department standpoint, definitely would have to take some corrective actions. We also, we get a monthly bulletin from the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology.
Right.
And they monitor rainfall, of course, and other climate variables across the region. And their monthly bulletin for, I think it was for April or March, did indicate that they had recommended actually that a drought be declared, a drought warning be declared for St. Kitts and Antigua. So, here it is, we were experiencing it locally from our own data, and then when we checked with the regional monitoring agency for climate and weather monitoring, we realized that they also were saying the same thing.
So clarify something for me, if you will. You're saying St. Kitts and Antigua are having severe drought. When we say St. Kitts, do we mean St. Kitts? Do we mean St. Kitts and Nevis? Are we saying that Nevis is not experiencing the same drought conditions currently? I'm just wondering because someone actually asked me the question. Okay,
so the bulletin that I looked at from the Caribbean Institute of Meteorology and Hydrology, my recollection is that it said St. Kitts. Now, some agencies refer to St. Kitts and they might not necessarily say Nevis, just as sometimes they said Antigua, they didn't say Antigua Barbuda.
Okay.
So, but given how close we are and how small we are, I would assume that it meant St. Kitts, Nevis, and Antigua Barbuda. Yeah.
What can ordinary people do about drought? What do the scientists recommend that we do?
Okay, so before I go to that though, I want to mention the fact that even as we are having this discussion at the beginning of June, and we realize for the last couple of days we've been getting some rain.
Yes.
Thank God. Some of us been praying, some of us been doing the
Yes,
rain.
some very hard rain.
Right, some of us been doing the rain dance. And so we've been getting some rain and we were thankful for that. I want to stress the point though that persons are not supposed to feel that because we've been getting some showers that means that, you know, the drought is over.
Right.
By no means. When you look at the rain as a pattern in terms of how it affects our water supply, it's not a short-term thing. It's not a day thing or a week thing. It's a month and years pattern. So if we don't get, if we get very reduced or very little rain for months, to compensate for that, we're going to need to get rain for months. So even as just today, as I frequently do, I visit like some of the areas where the water comes, where we capture the water from the springs, from the rivers, into our system. And so far, we have not seen any increase in the flows. So notwithstanding the fact that...
we're in a drought, is basically what you're saying. Of course,
what I'm saying is that it will take weeks and maybe even months before our flows start building back up to where they ought to be. So I want to stress that to the water consuming public, that don't mind because you see it start raining, that immediately our reservoirs are going to start filling back up.
Yeah. No,
the depletion of the water, the fact that we will not have gotten water, rainfall for a long period, it will take likewise a long period for us to get the type of rain that would replenish our sources and our aquifers.
Wonderful, because that is why I was, trying to figure out what can we do at this stage at that time, because I'm wondering, are droughts dangerous? Can they be dangerous?
Very much so. Well, of course, we would have issued warning to persons in terms of how they use water. We ask persons to work with us. Don't use water for certain non-essential purposes, like washing down your building and your driveways and so on. Watering grass especially. I could recall, some years ago, even in the height of the dry season, all around the hillsides are brown and so on, and you go certain places and you see person's lawn green. And that to me, that is a crime, because some persons in some parts of the island can't get water to have a good bath, can't get water to flush their toilets properly and carry out their hygiene. And there are some persons, on the other hand, who are throwing water on grass.
You say that should be a crime. You think seriously that there should be some enforcement?
Of course, and I've said it recently that our legislation, the Water Department, the Water Resources, Water Courses and Waterworks Act, our legislation does give us the authority to discontinue service or to disconnect anyone who is using water in such a way during a drought. And so we've been going around and asking persons to please be considerate of others.
Asking at this time?
Yes.
Okay.
And so we will continue to do that.
All right, so is there a trigger for drought? And if so, what is the local trigger?
Well,
is it something that residents can contribute to, is what I'm really trying to find out.
I really didn't delve into that part of it. On a larger scale, what we're hearing a lot of talk about, though, is climate change and climate variability. And some persons would say that, well, we as small islands might not be contributing, we as small islands might not be contributing so much to the so-called climate change or climate variability as maybe larger countries that, use a lot of hydrocarbon and pollute the atmosphere and affect the ozone layer and so on. But of course, we all have a carbon footprint. We all use vehicles, we all burn hydrocarbon, and so all of us contribute at the end of the day to the climate change and climate variability. So, you know, we each one of us can do a small part in terms of slowing down you know, that change that is happening.
What happens to the aquifer levels during a drought?
That's a very good question. All of our water in St. Kitts, we stress, comes from rain. And so when the rain falls on the ground, mostly in the mountain areas, because most persons would know we get higher rainfall levels in the hills, in the mountain. That water, some of it soaks into the ground. Of course, depending on how heavy it rains, some will run off, the guts will flow for a short period. But most of that water soaks into the ground and goes into our aquifers. And so when we don't get rain for a long period, our aquifer doesn't get the sort of replenishment, or we call it recharge, that it needs. And that is why it is important that is why we're able to have water and able to still provide millions of gallons of water per day. We produce about 4 to 5 million gallons of water per day from our wells.
Okay.
Even during the drought. And that is because it is groundwater. That is because when it falls and it goes into the ground, it's a slow process.
Yes.
And so it's a slow process of traveling beneath the ground. That is why we're able to have water even during this dry season.
Do local farmers have access to forums to assist them in terms of managing the way that they plant and harvest and so on during drought? I'm asking just because, is there a collaboration between the Water Services Department perhaps and the Ministry of Agriculture, where education and awareness is made available to the farmers?
Okay, we've traditionally have a good working relationship with the Ministry of Agriculture because I'm recently back in the water sector. I haven't been in close communication with the folks at the Agriculture Department, and so that is something that I would hope to have
Does it
in
seem
the coming weeks.
Like something that you would recommend?
Oh, definitely. Farmers are one of our key stakeholders in the water sector, and the farmers always require more water, and so we have to factor them in the equation. At the Water Department, I will say, to a large extent, our first concern will be the domestic, meaning households and so on, and businesses and so on. And so the farmers will probably put up their hand and say, wait, Mr. Williams, what about us? I mean, why are we not first or second too?
Yeah.
And we recognize that agriculture and farming is a key sector, and it needs water. And we have, over the years, tried to give more and more water to the farmers. But there is limitations as to how much water we can provide to farmers from our system.
Before we go, we've got just about 1 minute left, Mr. Williams. Tell persons, if you will, what we can do to assist in nationwide in the conservation of water.
Okay, going forward, we need to rethink how we treat water in St. Kitts. We need to get out of the complacent zone that we're in, that, you know, water takes care of itself, and the people at Water Department will always find the water and provide it. Yes, we will, but that is only one side of the coin, and I keep telling person we must manage water in a sustainable way. We must look at both sides of the coin. One side is reproducing and providing the water. The other, though, is how people use it. And there needs to be some changes in how persons use water in St. Kitts. And so we're asking persons to start thinking about just trying to use less water, because it is not an abundant and unlimited supply.
Cromwell Williams is the Manager Water Engineer at the Water Services Department in St. Kitts. Thank you so much, Mr. Williams, for joining us on the program today. And thank you everyone for joining us. I'm Vesta Southwell. Blessed.
Everybody beware, you better prepare. Disaster can happen anytime, anywhere. Everybody beware, you better prepare. Disaster can happen anytime, anywhere.